Holy crap, I set a goal for November for 50 new members at realworldpdr.com, and we only need 4 more. That means we're gonna get 50 new signups at realworldpdr.com. That's people ready to learn the art of PDR. This is gonna be an example of a lesson that you can find over and over again at Real World PDR. So if this type of lesson is for you, check out realworldpdr.com for tons more. One thing that I found that's really interesting to try to do is to break down some of Casper's repairs. So whenever he does a video lesson or he takes video, to turn it into a lesson. It's actually helped me learn a lot myself. Watching his techniques and trying to understand what it is exactly he's doing is really a fun little project. So here is one of those examples. This thing is extremely deep and has this interesting little crease that runs through here. So tool choice is going to be imperative for Casper, I think. So the first tool that he decides to start out with is going to be this Stanliner pirate hook. Now, when you can use a Stanliner pirate hook for a crease, hey, that is the animal. That's what you want to do. But unfortunately, a lot of times when you're working in a door like this, it doesn't have quite the right bend on it, or the bracing gets in the way. So I think that's probably what Casper's going to discover here. So while it was an excellent choice for a crease dent, I'm not sure in the door this low it was the right answer. You can see him using that rolling technique. Now he is getting to some of this crease, which is extremely helpful. Anytime that you can get this crease coming up without a whole bunch of stitching, that's going to be your best bet. So before we get too far, let's take a look at what stitching is for the beginners out there. So what stitching is simply this. So this is approximately what our crease looks like, this white line. Now stitching is whenever you're poking along this crease, little bits at a time, and what happens is you get these little push marks. As you can see, those are going to become high, where the area in between them are going to be low. Now there are ways that we'll talk about to mitigate a lot of this, but this is the thing that becomes a giant pain in the ass whenever you're doing crease dents. One way to get rid of some of that texture to make sure that you don't cause the stitching is this. So if you're trying to fix a crease, the red line here is going to be our crease, and you're pushing and it's facing you. So the crease is coming back at you directly. What can happen is this. To you, the crease is going to look like it's coming up just fine until you move your position. Now, once we move our position, you're going to see that a lot of the damage that was being caused, this stitching, has been hidden from you. So that's why Casper has his light set up in an oblique. I'll show you that here in a second. But in all aspects of PDR, don't underestimate light placement and body position, and that is never more true than whenever you're fixing a crease dent. So let's take a look at Casper's light here. Now, the camera plays a bit of a trick with you, but look at Casper's light. He actually has his light set up at an angle. As you can see here, I'm going to run this arrow along so you can see that is not straight up and down. That's at an angle. Now, let's take a look at Casper's body position. So this light is running this way. So where this arrow ends up, that's about where Casper's standing. So it's going across this dent. He's not working this thing parallel, it's more perpendicular. That's what's going to allow him to be able to see any of this stitching that happens. Now, stitching is going to happen. Keeping your pushes, extremely close together is going to help a lot. Starting with the right tips is going to help a lot. So since this dent is very deep, but it's not really stretched, working with something that he's working with now, like a tape tip, is wonderful. You're going to pick up larger areas of metal at a time. Unfortunately for him, it looks like that tool wasn't giving him the leverage that he needed. So now he's going to switch over to the Stanliner tool. This one was introduced at MTE in Vegas this year. It's got a nice swooping motion, and the end is a bit of a blade. It's double-sided, so one side is a really nice soft push, the other side is more like a blade tool. And whether or not I agree with him in this situation, he's going to use this side with the blade. I probably would have used the rounded side here to pick up large areas at once. But it still turns out great. Good work, Casper. So as you can see here, he's keeping his pushes nice and close together. Don't space him out too far because that's going to contribute a lot to that stitching effect. Now, conventional wisdom used to be this. Use a soft tip when starting creases. Now, I'm not going to say that's absolutely wrong, but what I am going to say is in a deep crease like this, a soft tip is fine to pick up what I like to call the slack, basically whatever the dent is going to give you. Now, if you continue to push with a soft tip past that point, what's going to happen is all of that pressure that's working against you is going to get inverted outwards into the panel, and this is an overpush. This is going to be something that's going to oil can on you later. Now, this isn't all creases. This is creases that are particularly deep like this. So yes, go ahead and use a soft tip to pick up the slack if you wish. Don't over push with a soft tip, and it's extremely easy to do. On a shallower crease, hey, no problem. Soft tip your little heart out. But because this one was so deep, and you'll see here that it's still close to oil canning at the end of this thing. Casper did a really nice job writing that fine line. If it's a shallow crease, go ahead, soft tip to your heart's content. Something deeper like this, you really need to keep in mind what an overpush is going to do. So here at this point, you can see there is still some of that stitching effect. Now Casper's going through and connecting the dots, basically picking up those lows that are in between those high points, but he has done a really good job of keeping it to a minimum. Now, in the effort to keep this entire thing one event and to make sure that his texture stays clean, he's going to go ahead and start knocking down some of these higher points because he wants to pick this whole thing up as a unit. But this is really going to show you how deep this dent was. As he's knocking down on this, it's going to want to sink back down on him. Now, this is your first sign that, hell, I might be dealing with some kind of oil can situation here. So proceeding with caution from this point is going to be extremely important. No over pushes here. Move your hand or the camera, Casper. Well, it's worth talking about that the knockdown he's using is the new knockdown from Dentless. Real comfy, real stubby thing. I like it. The tip that he's using to knock down with is the Pee-wee tip from Dead On Dent Tools. It's part of the ballistic line, and it's a really great precision knockdown tool. I really like that tip. Again, that's Dead On Dent Tools. Hold on, since you're watching this on YouTube, now's my time. I get to tell you that if you're not on realworldpdr.com and you're trying to learn PDR, you're dumb. Ha ha ha, just kidding. Kinda. We've got every kind of a lesson you can imagine, from this advanced lesson with these nasty bodyline hits with this really weird crown thing going on that we just posted. Not quite here yet, that's okay. We just posted an aluminum tutorial. How to fix beginner aluminum. This also deals with concave panels and how to repair those. What about this one recently posted at Real World? This is an entire bedside crease that we repaired with Keiko Crease Killer tabs. I go into those, how to best use them, and what they're good for. So if you really want to learn how to do PDR, realworldpdr.com is a place to be. Back to your repair. Now, at this point, he's going to switch over to one of the ratcheting handle blem door tools. The blem door tools come really sharp, which is great for situations like this where you're trying to prevent over pushes, you're trying to push with precision and clean up. They also have a Real World PDR profile that you can get, and we also have a discount code for blem on realworldpdr.com where you can get those tools at a significant discount. But what he's using now is this blem, and what he's doing is going through and just connecting the dots like we had talked about earlier. When you get to this point in the repair, precision is absolutely key. So if you have skipped over a bunch of your training, you're trying to skip forward to something that's a little too advanced for you, this is where it's going to show. Because trying to hit in between the points that you've already pushed is extremely difficult. And hey, the really cool thing is if you get in one of the points that you've pushed previously and knocked down, it's going to want to push up higher. So definitely precision, understand where the tip of your tool is. And here is absolutely the best advice I'll give anybody in PDR. If you don't know where the tip of your tool is, don't push on it. That's right. Don't go pushing somewhere where you might be causing more damage. Things like light position, head position, that kind of thing is going to show you where the tip of your tool is. Learning how to walk that tip into the area that you're trying to push, that's going to help immensely as well. We cover this extensively in the earlier lessons at realworldpdr.com because this is your foundations, this is your building blocks. Trying to skip ahead before mastering those techniques is going to lead to disaster, I promise you. Now, the next time that he knocks this dent down here, please note there's kind of a hump in the middle. You can see those two lines, the kind of brownish line and the white line squeezing together, which indicates a hump. There, now you can see it right through the middle there. Watch what happens as he starts knocking this down. This thing is going to bowl out. That means it's going to become a big dent again, more or less. So at this point, it's Casper's job to try to figure out how to stabilize this to keep that from happening again. Fortunately for him, this isn't a really bad oil can. This is what we might call a light oil can, right? But as you watch him knock down, you can kind of see that thing start to bowl out. It's going to get a lot bigger here. Now, the secret to this is a lot of times those tiny little micro lows that you have in there need to be pushed up in order to help stabilize this thing. Now, if this was bigger outside of this area, needs to be pushed up to help stabilize this thing. Now, that's more of an advanced lesson, and I do cover that at realworldpdr.com in some of the advanced content. Now, common mistake here, just because this is a big dent now, it doesn't mean that you need to push hard. No, you're still pinpointing those tiny little micro lows just within this dent now, because that's going to bring this dent up just fine. You don't need to push harder as if this was a large dent to begin with. This is a dent that has been worked. It's going to work with you pretty smoothly. Just pinpoint those tiny little micro lows. Now, this is something that hail guys are really, really good at on top panels, your hoods, your roofs, your trunks. On top panels, they are extremely good at this. A lot of times, hail guys do struggle on side panels simply because they don't do near as much as your normal dinger will do. So looking at this from a different angle, you can still see there is just a slight line running through here. But Casper's taking care of that small, tiny little pushes. Any extra texture here is going to become a huge pain in the ass in the future. But these tiny precision pushes are pulling double duty. First, obviously, they're repairing the dent. Second, they're stabilizing this oil can situation. The next time that we see him knocked down, you're going to see that it still kind of wants to go into a dent, but not nearly as bad. This is a game of patience. You have to be patient here. Pushing like crazy is, you guessed it, an overpush and additional texture. Man, two things that we're always trying to freaking avoid in PDR. So watch Casper use his knockdown here and really pay attention to how this thing isn't trying to become as bad of a dent as it was before. This is the stabilization process. It happens slowly, it doesn't happen fast. But this is how you fix deep dents like this, especially deep dents that have a big ass crease running through the middle. All in all, I will say this was excellent work on a very tricky dent by Casper. One more thing I should notice is this is Subaru metal. Was this a, Chevy, Ford, something like that? Maybe except for like a Ford Fiesta. Those things kind of suck too. If this was not Subaru metal, let's just say that, this would be a lot easier. This Subaru metal is paper thin and difficult to work on. Unfortunately, we live in the land of the Subarus and we deal with this all the time. So I'm going to go ahead and buzz through a little bit of this so I can keep your attention because this is just more of the same. Let's go to the cross check real quick. All in all, not too flippin' terrible, Casper. So he's going to go ahead and he's going to push a little more here. He's going to do a little bit more knockdown work. And at the very end of this, there was a little low that I would have liked to see him take care of. But you can see the big picture, the customer view turned out great. So there might have been a little wiggle because this thing was so deep. But hey, that's part of it. So what you just saw happen there is that he put a little too much oomph into that knockdown. It still needs a little bit more stabilization. So he's going to push on either side. So both these lows on either side of that middle part still need stabilized. Now, he knows that better than anybody because he just knocked this down into a big dent again. But before you boo Casper, why don't you try one of these yourself? These are really, really tricky. Now, there is a little tip that I'm going to give at the end of this video that will help this quite a bit. But all in all, like I said, real good job, Casper. A little bit of a wet sand here and all of that texture would be gone. Now, let's take a look at what this looked like afterwards. And I'm going to stop it here at a moment that I can illustrate something that would help here. All right, so as we do this pan across this panel, my eyes picked up something right about here. If you'll notice, there's a real shallow low just towards us in this still shot here. Picking up in this area would have done two things. First, it would have drawn some of the metal out of that repair area. And what would have happened then is it would have given it a more flat appearance. Also would have helped stabilize that just a little bit more. So if I had to critique anything that Casper did here, it's missing that shallow low. Quite frankly, scooting your light back a couple of feet, maybe using some natural reflection to finish this thing would have completely handled that. All in all though, good work, Casper. Can't really be too pissed about that. So if you like this tutorial, this is just an example of more than 100 at realworldpdr.com. As you see, there's no fluff, there's no bullshit, there's no sales. This is just PDR tutorials at their finest.